My name's Ellie Chandler. I'm 38, born and raised in Leeds, now based in London. I serve as a Major General in the British Army, stationed at Whitehall. I live alone, unless you count my dying houseplants and the occasional bottle of wine with strong opinions. Right, so Dad's retirement bash. Not some quiet do at the local pub with sausage rolls and a dodgy karaoke machine. No, this was a full-blown military-themed ego explosion. Rented function room at the golf club. Name cards printed in calligraphy. And enough medals on old men's chests to blind you if you look too close. The kind of event where people say things like, "He's a national treasure," while sipping overpriced charades and ignoring their own children. I walked in and instantly regretted not accidentally missing the train. Mom was flitting about in a sequined M&S. Number she'd obviously been saving for a funeral or a coup, whichever came first. She was dabbing at her eyes like she'd just witnessed a royal wedding, not the early retirement of a man who's emotionally allergic to affection. And my sister? Laughing loudly at everything. The kind of performative cackling that screams, "Look at me, Daddy. I'm successful and tolerable, and I never joined the military. Please validate me." Honestly, she sounded like she was auditioning for Loose Women. Meanwhile, I was littering at the back like a hungover ghost, one hand on a lukewarm glass of something suspiciously fizzy, the other checking for the nearest fire exit, because I knew why I was there. It wasn't out of love, or pride, or even obligation. No, I'd been summoned dragged really to be the punchline. The warm-up act for Dad's final victory speech. The failure child. The one in uniform. The one who didn't go to uni, didn't become a lawyer, and didn't marry that nice boy from accounting with the Ford Fiesta and a house in Guildford. I was the unspoken disappointment in combat boots. And what do you do at an event where you're the emotional equivalent of a roadkill knape? You drink, quietly, strategically, like it's the only thing separating you from full psychological collapse in front of your extended family and Colonel Bloody Saunders from Dad's old regiment. I'd been there 10 minutes and already overheard two people say, "Didn't know he had a third kid." Same, Brenda, same. There's something deeply spiritual about being physically present, but emotionally erased. Very on brand for my childhood, actually. The speeches started naturally. One by one, the men stood and spoke in the kind of dramatic war poetry tone that makes you forget they once got drunk and weed in a bush outside Butlin's. It was a carousel of backslapping nonsense, tales of glory, duty, and how Brian once saved the unit from a disastrous curry night. By the time it was Dad's turn, my ears were bleeding and I'd started counting the ceiling tiles just to feel something. He stood up, smiled like he was about to propose to himself, and said, and I quote, "I'm proud to have such talented children." Long pause. He pointed to my brother, James, of course, with his software firm, brilliant lad. Then to my sister, Rachel, the solicitor, proper career woman, sorted. Then me. He did that thing where someone glances in your direction, like they're squinting into the sun, or spotting a rat in the distance. And, well, then there's our soldier. Still finding her feet, bless her. Probably best if you don't say anything tonight, love. Wouldn't want you to embarrass us. He chuckled, like it was banter. Like he hadn't just gutted me with a butter knife in front of 50 people eating roast chicken and pretending they weren't witnessing an emotional assassination. And for a second, just a second, I felt it. That warm, familiar pang of maybe I am the problem. But then I remembered. I've commanded more people than this room holds. I've led units into places Dad couldn't even pronounce. And I've done it all without his approval. Still, I stood up. No drama, no tantrum. Just that very British sense of dignified collapse. The kind where you're clearly dying inside. But you're still polite enough to excuse yourself. I picked up my bag, nodded at a potted plant, possibly out of habit, and turned to leave. And that's when it happened. A voice from across the room, calm, loud, and entirely disbelieving. "Wait, are you Major General Chandler?" Everything stopped. Forks mid-air. Mouths open. Dad holding his whiskey like it had suddenly betrayed him. And me? I just stood there, smiling, like someone who'd finally run out of F***Ks and found something better, poetic justice. Then came the moment we'd all been dreading, Dad's speech. He got up like he was about to deliver the state of the nation, all puffed chest and smug grin, holding the mic like Simon Cowell had. Just asked him to audition for Britain's Got Delusions. The room went quiet, which is a miracle considering half the guests had been downing Glenfiddich since 4 p.m. and were already 3 insults away from a fight over whose regiment did real service. He does that awkward throat clear men over 60 do when they're about to say something deeply inappropriate and expect applause for it. I'm proud to have such talented children. Right, strap in. Here comes the pain. He starts with James, my brother, the family's golden goose and walking. Ket Talk, runs his own tech company. Dad says like he personally invented Silicon Valley. There's a dramatic pause like we're all meant to bow in reverence. Cue smug nods from the in-laws who love to remind everyone they were early investors. By accident. Next, Rachel, the sister, solicitor, card-carrying member of the smug middle class. He calls her brilliant driven and eloquent beyond her years, which is rich coming from a man who once asked her what pro bono meant during a Sunday roast and then insisted it sounded Italian. The room claps. Mama's welling up again, bless her. Someone whispers, so accomplished. Another says, they've done well for themselves, haven't they? And then he swivels. To me. Now, if you've ever had a slow-motion car crash of an emotional moment, this was it. The look on his face. Somewhere between amused and vaguely inconvenienced. Like I'd wandered in off the street and interrupted his family PowerPoint. He tilts his head, all mock affection and parental bile. And then there's our soldier. He says it like I'm a lost cat who accidentally enlisted. Still finding her feet, bless her. But, maybe don't speak tonight, love. Wouldn't want you to embarrass us. Wouldn't want me to embarrass us? Ah yes, there it is. The paternal love bomb. Dropped with all the grace of a drunk uncle at a wedding disco. And he just stands there chuckling to himself. Like he's made some light. Cheeky comment, not just publicly disemboweled. Me in front of half the British Army in an open buffet. My brother doesn't even flinch. My sister winces, but still smiles. Because we've all been trained from birth to swallow family shame with a side of trifle. Mom says nothing. Just fiddles with her bracelet. Like maybe she can hypnotize herself. Back to 1983. Me? I sit there, clutching my wine like a lifebuoy, and trying to remember how to breathe through humiliation. I force a polite smile, British. Default setting for emotional trauma, and wonder, not for the first time, if anyone would notice if I quietly slid under the table and never resurfaced. And the worst part? He thinks it's funny. He genuinely believes this little dig is character building. A rite of passage. They'll laugh along and then go wash his Land Rover out of gratitude for the privilege of being insulted by someone who thinks an iPad is just a posh clipboard. I wanted to scream, or stand up, or throw the bloody chicken skewer at his head. But I didn't, because I knew how this worked. In our family, you take the hit. You smile. You excuse yourself to the loo and cry in front of the hand dryer. Because tears don't count if they're evaporated by a Dyson Airblade. He moved on. To another toast. Another story. Another anecdote that positioned him as the center of a universe I've apparently only orbited quietly, and preferably out of frame. And yet I stayed seated, dignified, quiet. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is not react. At least not yet. So I stood up. No dramatic flounce. No chair-scraping tantrum. Just the kind of quiet exit move only British people and assassins manage. To pull off without drawing attention. Polite, calm, absolutely dead inside. I didn't say anything. Didn't need to. My entire posture was screaming, cheers for that. Dad, I'll just go yeet myself into traffic now. But outwardly, I even managed a small smile. You know, that tight-lipped one people wear at funerals when someone's just said something wildly inappropriate about the deceased second wife. I tucked my chair in, because even in the midst of psychological warfare, manners matter. God forbid I leave my seat askew and get judged for that as well. And then I began the walk of shame. Except not the fun, sexy kind where you're limping home from someone else's flat in one shoe and a glittery regret. No, this was the your dad just disowned you in front of people wearing cufflinks variety. Slower, heavier, with a dash of existential dread. I passed the buffet table. The mini sausage rolls stared back at me with more warmth than anyone in the room had offered all evening. I thought about nicking one for the road, but decided I didn't want to be remembered as the emotional train wreck who also double-fisted volume events. I was just reaching the doors. So close. Freedom within arm's reach. My escape from the passive-aggressive Olympics was seconds away. And then, someone cleared their throat. Loud, sharp, the kind of theatrical cough that carries weight, intent, rank. Wait, are you Major General Chandler? The room fell absolutely silent. Not the normal polite silence, no. The kind of silence you get when someone's dropped a glass at a wedding and the entire family turns to see who's ruined the mood. My heart stopped. So did my feet. I turned slowly like I was in a soap opera and someone had just called out my secret identity. The man speaking? My dad's boss. Yes, the actual boss. The man himself. Colonel No Time for Nonsense Whitmore. A legend, practically war-themed royalty. And he was staring at me. Not past me. Not through me. At me. Confused, curious. Like he'd just spotted the queen buying fags in a hoodie. Major General Chandler? He said again. This time louder. My spine straightened instinctively. Years of training kicked in. Yes, sir. I said it without thinking. Just pure instinct. Like muscle memory. You know how pigeons dodge Gregs, rappers, or how Auntie Pam always starts crying at weddings. The entire room turned. Like a choreographed scene. Forks paused midair. Wine glasses frozen in mid-sip. Dad looked like someone had slapped him with a salmon. Mum clutched her pearls, actual pearls by the way. Not a figure of speech. She genuinely brought pearls to a golf club retirement dinner because aspiration. My sister blinked. My brother made a weird half-choke sound. Like he just realized he wasn't the most important person in the room anymore. And me? I just stood there. Still holding my coat. Still standing near the door. But now, suddenly, I wasn't the embarrassment. I was the surprise guest. The twist in the plot. The soldier who'd been written off. And just got reintroduced as the Major General. Funny, isn't it? You spend years trying to prove yourself. Sacrificing sleep, sanity, and a social life. You keep your head down, do the work, climb the ranks, quietly. No fanfare. No group chats full of humble brags. And it's not until you're literally walking out of the door, half broken, emotionally bruised and very much planning to cry in the car, that someone finally sees you. And there it was. That moment, the kind you can't plan for because if you did, people would accuse you of being too dramatic. Everyone turned. Not glanced. Not glanced and quickly pretended to look away like when someone farts in a lift. No, full body rotation. Like synchronized swimmers. The man who spoke. Not Cousin Gary, not Uncle Colin. With the gamey hip and 700 war stories that were all definitely fictional. No, this was the boss. Dad's actual boss. Colonel Bloody Whitmore. The man Dad practically worships. In that way, only men over 60 worship. Other men who outrank them drive Land Rovers and own a watch they describe as a good bit of kit. And he's staring at me. Like actually looking. Not through me, not over me. Not past me like I'm an unfortunate plant pot someone knocked into. No, direct eye contact. Sharp. Focused. Major General Chandler? He repeats. Now, just to pause here, you know those moments when your brain sort of checks out of your body? Like, right, well, I'm not dealing with this? Yeah, that happened. I blinked once, Twice, my mouth worked before I could think. Yes, sir. Just that, calm, crisp. Could have been saying milk, no sugar. Same energy. But the reaction? Oh, the reaction. It was like I'd stood on a table and shouted, I'm Beyonce and you're all basic. The room froze. And not polite frozen like when someone's giving a toast and you pretend to care. No, this was that what dash the dash actual dash hell dash just happened kind of freeze. The kind you get when someone brings up politics at a family BBQ or mentions that thing. Aunt Sheila did a Magaluf 97. Dad? His whiskey glass wobbled in his hand. Sloshed a bit. Almost went over the edge, just like his dignity. His jaw, meanwhile, might still be rolling around on the floor between the volume of events and his credibility. My brother looked like someone had just unplugged him. Rachel, bless her, halfway between admiration and panic. Like she couldn't decide whether to applaud or update her CV. Mom gave me that face she does when she doesn't know whether to cry or start offering people tea. You know the one. It's the universal British mom crisis face. Half apologetic, half, we don't talk about emotions here, love, have a biscuit. And I, still standing near the door, still holding my coat, suddenly became someone. Not the disappointment. Not the misfit. Not the don't say anything in front of dad's mate's kid. No, I was Major General Chandler. The one who apparently outranked most of the room, including the one who birthed me. And look, I'd love to tell you I was humble in that moment. That I gave a small nod, bowed out gracefully, and didn't feel a sick, twisted rush of pure vindication. But I'm not that evolved. I felt like every rejection, every smug look, every maybe the army's just a phase, got kicked straight in the throat by poetic justice and high heels. The colonel turned to Dad. You didn't tell me your daughter was that Chandler. And honestly, he didn't reply. Couldn't. Because how do you explain to your boss that the child you've just insulted in front of everyone is not just in the army? She leads it? So there we were. Me, still standing, still clutching my coat like I might use it to shield myself from emotional shrapnel. Dad, visibly malfunctioning. And Colonel Whitmore? He looked like the cat that not only got the cream, but poured it into a crystal decanter and drank it with a twist of smug. He turned to Dad, and I mean turned. Full body. Shoulders squared, grin slowly spreading like a knife through butter. A grin so sharp you could vet butter crumpets and cut ties with your eldest child all in one go. You didn't tell me your daughter was the Chandler, he said, each syllable dipped in oof. The one running Joint Task Command. Joint Task Command. Now for context, that's not a summer camp. It's not a project group. It's the military equivalent of running a multinational corporation, except with more explosions and less beanbags in the break room. And the cherry on this emotional trifle? He turns back to me. It's an honor, ma'am. Your leadership in the Eastern sector was extraordinary. He called me ma'am. In front of Dad. In front of everyone. Even the buffet table seemed to straighten its posture. You could hear the collective gasp of 100 awkward dinner guests all realizing they'd been cheering for the wrong bloody sibling. Somewhere in the background, I'm convinced my sister's law degree let out a soft, wheezing sob, like it had just realized it wasn't the family's crowning achievement anymore. I swear Rachel blinked in Morse code for how the hell do we miss this? And Dad? He looked like he was going through all 7 stages of grief simultaneously. First denial, no, that can't be our Ellie. She wears combat boots and doesn't cry it down in Abby. Then anger at himself probably. Then bargaining, maybe if he claps now. It cancels out the 20 years of emotional neglect? Honestly, he looked like someone had just told him they were replacing his shed with a Pilates studio. Completely unmoored, lost, exposed, holding his whiskey like it was the last piece of himself that hadn't yet been publicly dismantled. Meanwhile, I was doing everything in my power not to grin, because that would have been unprofessional and slightly evil, but also deeply deserved. Inside, I was throwing an entire parade. There were fireworks, marching bands, and a float shaped like my childhood trauma driving over his fragile masculinity. Outside, just a polite nod. Because that's what we do, isn't it? We Brits, we don't scream "suck it, Dad" and backflip off the table. We smile politely. We offer a handshake. We act like we haven't just won the entire emotional Olympics in one sentence. "Thank you, sir," I said. Cool as you like. Because nothing says revenge served. Properly chilled like outclassing your own father in front of his commanding officer in a decorative cheese board. Dad, bless him, tried to recover. He mumbled something about not keeping track of my career. Oh, really? Not keeping track? Right, because promotions just slip your mind, don't they? Like milk going off. Or that time you forgot to pick me up from the school disco and I sat next to a bin for 45 minutes in heels from Primark. Anyway, apparently 3 promotions in 4 years wasn't enough to warrant a text. Or a phone call. Or, I don't know, basic human curiosity. Meanwhile, his mates, the old army gang, were squirming like a bunch of year 10 lads who just realized their group chat had been read out loud in assembly. You could practically hear the whispers pinging across the table, like bad reception on a group Zoom. Wait, did she say Major General? I thought she worked in admin. No, Joint Task Command. That's no admin, that's war-level Sudoku. Bloody hell, she outranks Brian and he's been in since Thatcher had a perm. At one point, I actually clocked one of them, Dave. I think his name was subtly Googling me under the table. On his phone. As if I wouldn't notice the Major General. Ellie Chandler Wikipedia tab open between his weather app and Candy Crush. I'd have been flattered if it wasn't so deeply awkward. And then the real zinger. One of them, gray hair, military mustache. Enough medals to sink a small canoe, leaned over to Dad and said deadpan. Didn't she outrank you by, 2 levels? Reader, I did. I outranked him by 2 full tiers. That's not a gentle nudge. That's a military leapfrog followed by a mic drop. You could almost see the shame creep up his collar, one regret at a time. The whiskey suddenly looked too heavy for him. The ice clinking around like it was judging him. And in that moment, for the first time in my adult life, Dad looked small. Not in a cruel way, just real, human, fallible, unarmored. Stripped of all the bravado and dad joke-shaped dismissals. I could tell he wanted to crawl inside the nearest canape and perish with dignity. He tried to laugh it off, of course. Something about, well, she's always been a go-getter. Like he hadn't spent 20 years calling me Private Puddle every time I dared speak up about anything. And me, I just smiled. The kind of smile women wear when they know they're finally being seen but are far too tired to throw a party about it. It was poetic, really. The man who once said, maybe the army will humble her, now being humbled by me. You can't make this stuff up. And if you did, no one would believe you. Too emotional. Too messy. Too perfectly British in its dysfunctional passive aggression. And that's the thing about respect. Sometimes it arrives not with a hug or an apology, but with your dad's best mate squinting at his iPhone and going, "Oi lad, she's on the Ministry of Defense site." So there we were. The air so thick with tension. You could have buttered it and served it. With a side of passive aggression. Dad looked like he'd just been personally insulted by the Queen. And I was still standing there, somehow the villain, the hero, and the uninvited guest all in one. Then the Colonel, my dad's boss, and accidental chaos conductor, lifted his glass. I braced myself. You know that instinct you get at family gatherings? That gut feeling that someone's about to say something that'll have you Googling emotional support wine? That. To Major General Chandler, he said. The finest strategic mind I've had the pleasure of working with. And just like that, the room tilted. No, genuinely, if someone had told me. The chandelier sighed and turned slightly in my direction. I would have believed them. There was a silence. Not the awkward kind this time. No, this was reverent, odd, slightly embarrassed maybe. Because they'd all been clapping for a retirement speech that peaked at, "I'm proud of my other children." It was like watching a BBC period drama, where the youngest daughter finally reveals. She's not just a seamstress. She runs the bloody empire. Mum? She tried to clap. Bless her. 3 stiff little claps like she wasn't sure if it was okay. like she needed clearance from the group chat first. Rachel blinked so hard I thought she might reboot. My brother stared at the tablecloth like it had personally betrayed him, and Dad? Well, Dad looked like he'd just bitten into a lemon that also reminded him of every bad decision he'd ever made. Eyes watering, lips twitching. Internal monologue probably screaming abort mission. He raised his glass too, eventually. Reluctantly, like it physically hurt him to acknowledge that his not-so-favorite child had become the bloody toast of the night. And me? I didn't curtsy, didn't smirk, didn't whip out a PowerPoint labeled "Who's embarrassed now?" I just gave a polite nod. One of those slow, quiet nods that says, yes, I heard that. Yes, you all heard that. And no, I don't need to rub it in. Because the universe just did it for me. Then I sat down. Not at the end of the table. Not hidden near the buffet with the kids and Aunt Linda's weird boyfriend, who once sold fake supplements on Facebook. No. Right, in the middle. Where I damn well belonged. Between Mom and the Colonel, who now looked at me like I was made of metals and divine intervention. Across from Dad, who wouldn't meet my eye. And frankly, that was the first gift he'd given me all evening. Funny, isn't it? You spend years clawing your way up. Not for applause. Not even for acceptance. Just to be seen. And in the end, all it took was one toast. One raised glass. And the retirement party that started as his S, quietly, poetically became mine. Dad didn't say a word. Not a peep. Not even one of his usual sighs. That sounds like he's just been personally attacked by my career choices. Nothing. And that silence? Oh, it screamed. You know when someone's so visibly uncomfortable? It's like their body's trying to evacuate their soul? That he looked like his internal monologue was short-circuiting. Like someone had unplugged the smug and accidentally hardwired in mortified disbelief. Even when my brother, bless his fragile masculinity, tried to lighten the mood with a half-arsed joke about underestimating the quiet ones, Dad just blinked. Didn't even fake laugh. And that's saying something. This is a man who once chuckled for 5 solid minutes over a pull my finger gag at Christmas dinner. But me, I wasn't quiet. Not really. I just stopped shouting at people who refused to hear me. He thought I was silent because I had nothing to say. Nah, I had loads to say. He just wasn't listening. And now? He was forced to. Like a front row seat at the emotional cinema, 3D glasses on. Popcorn in hand, except the film was called Here's Everything You Ignored. Dad and I was both the director and the explosive finale. You could practically see him trying to recalibrate, staring into his whiskey like it might offer answers. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Just made his face go a little redder and his silence a little louder. Every time someone mentioned my name, he flinched, like they were throwing paper cuts directly at his ego. And the Colonel? Still going. Still praising my Eastern Sector strategy. Asking questions about leadership operations. Acting like I was the actual reason for the evening. Which, by this point, I basically was. The retirement dinner had become less of a farewell for Dad and more of a surprise. Your daughter's not a disgrace. Party. Karma didn't just knock. No, she showed up in heels, walked straight through the banquet hall, grabbed the mic and read my entire military resume out loud. With flair. With volume. With receipts. And Dad? Sat there, red-faced, speechless. Like someone had muted him with the truth. Not even Rachel, queen of diplomatic backhanded compliments, dared to fill the silence. You know things are bad when even she doesn't try to spin it into character building. And as for me, I just enjoyed it. Quietly. Because some victories don't need a war cry. Just a well-timed mic drop. And the sweet, sweet sound of someone else's silence saying more than an apology ever could. 3 days later. Not immediately. Not even the next day when the embarrassment was fresh and ripe. Like a sweaty gym sock in a sandwich bag. No, 3 days. Precisely the amount of time it takes. A proud man to dig himself out of a pit of public humiliation. With nothing but misplaced dignity and a half-charged Samsung. And then, ping. One text from Dad. Didn't realize how far you'd come. Proud of you. That was it. No context. No hello. No, sorry for treating you like military. Roadkill in front of 60 people and a trifle. Just that. No full stops. No emojis. Just flatline fatherhood. The textual equivalent of lukewarm tea and a chipped, mug-labeled world's okayest parent. And the thing is, I didn't even cry. Didn't rage. Didn't throw my phone against the kettle like I used to when he'd forget my birthday. Or call me the Ladette in Boots. After my first deployment, I just stared at it. Like, is that it? 20-odd years of eye rolls, backhanded comments, and the constant soundtrack of, when will you settle down? And now you're proud? Because some man in a higher pay grade clapped for me at a dinner table. You thought I didn't deserve to sit at? Cool, brilliant, how very on brand. I didn't reply. Because I didn't need to. I didn't need his pride, you see? I needed his respect. And not the fake, performative kind where he introduces me to his mates as our Ellie. She does something in the army. I think she files things. No, actual respect. The kind where you shut up, look me in the eye, and realize I never needed to prove a damn thing. And now? I had it. Without begging. Without compromising. Without crying in the loo after he said something casually cruel in front of Non. He could keep his text. Stick it in the same drawer he keeps his outdated opinions and emotional illiteracy. Because I've got medals on my wall in my name. On operations he couldn't spell. If you paid him, so no, Dad. I didn't come this far to finally get your pride. I came this far so I could sit at the head of a table. Not politely, and know I earned every ounce of what you refused to give me. Respect. Which, by the way, doesn't come with a smiley face or a thumbs up emoji. It comes with silence. And a very, very late text. So here's what I've learned. People, especially the ones who should know better, will downplay your worth when it threatens their own narrative. They'll twist your silence into weakness, your humility into invisibility, and your achievements into, well, she got lucky. And sometimes, those people are family. The people who wiped your nose with tea towels, drove you to school with a cigarette in one hand and crushed dreams in the other, and somehow still think they get to narrate your life story. But here's the thing. Power, real power, isn't about shouting the loudest. It's not storming in with fireworks and demands. No, it's quieter, sharper, the kind that shows up again and again, even when no one claps. Especially then. It's saying nothing when they expect you to scream. It's walking into a room full of people who never saw you coming, and watching their jaws hit the carpet when they finally clock who you really are. Because the truth, the absolute chef's kiss truth, the sweetest revenge isn't rage. It's calm. It's sitting still while the world, including your dad with his 1993 view of success and gender roles tighter than his dress socks, catches up to who you've always been. You know what I used to want? A bloody well done from him. A proper one. Not the backhanded. I suppose it's not bad for a girl nonsense. But now I don't need it. Didn't even need that text if we're being honest. Because here's the plot twist. You don't need to be loud to be lethal. Especially not when you're a woman in uniform. Because nothing, and I mean nothing, scares the patriarchy more than a woman who outranks her dad and can parallel park under pressure. So no, I'm not sorry. Not sorry for joining the army instead of the family narrative. Not sorry for earning my stripes without his applause. And definitely not sorry for making that retirement dinner a bit uncomfortable. Because respect? That's earned. And I earned mine without screaming, without groveling, and without ever asking for permission. They underestimated me. Now they know better. And honestly, that's enough.